It's a new year, and it's a new weather wagers. Happy
We're
2020.
back, baby.
Yeah, we are, and happy 2023, everybody. We did a brief episode last week when we were on our holiday breaks. It was great to see you, Dan, and now we're back here at our Digital Now Center recording a fresh episode, back with all of the things you love about it. And we are going to be talking about the weather for some big games. This is really only an NFL week, although we have to touch on the College Football National Championship, which is set to go in the new year.
This has been a fun time. I must admit, even though I am a huge college football fan, I lost a little momentum there in the middle of December through that last week of bowl games.
And it always tends to happen that way.
But make no mistake about it. I really think the matchups that were in some of the bigger bowls, it was fun.
Yes, it was. And in listening to a lot of the experts and the folks that we follow that cover college football for a living, they agreed. There were some really fun matchups, and the momentum certainly picked up, especially for the last week of bowl games. It was a lot of fun to watch, and we will get into all of that, including the national championship game. But we do want to start. We have to go back 2 weeks now. You and I did not make picks last week. Again, it was more of a brief discussion, holiday fun episode for us at each of our homes recording that one, but we may not want to go back to last week, because this is why I hate picking the NFL, and I certainly hate picking the NFL against the spread. Woof. And it's just really, really ugly. Can we get a sad sound, a pathetic trombone, anything? Because, Dan, it was brutal.
And let's face it, the NFL right now, this season has become the race to get to 8-8, and there's
Yep.
a lot of mediocre, cruddy football.
Well, and I'm going to go on. I may go on several rants today, but this is
the floor is yours.
This is the first of many. I have said since probably I came out of the womb. I don't understand how anybody can like the NFL more than college. And college football gives you great moments, upsets. You've got the bands, you've got the pageantry, you've got the traditions, you've got stunning upsets and shocking last-second plays. And you've got, you've got great teams that, are there year after year. You've got a team like TCU that, came out of nowhere this year. And it was nice to see that they're in the national title game. And it's just, you've got characters galore. There is something special about college football. And when I watch the NFL, don't get me wrong, I like the NFL.
I do too.
And it's a lot of fun to watch, especially this time of year. This is the time of year I really like it. But listen, here's the end of my rant, and you can agree or disagree, but it's a lot of mediocre trash. 7-9, 8-8, 6-6. I don't really think it's that fun to watch.
Right now, I would agree with you, and I think it goes back to what I've been saying, that the NFL really likes the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady teams of the world, and this longer season of 17 games rewards teams like that, because you can get away with having one or two good players and piece it together. Now, my counter-argument would be, if you're an Eagles fan like we are, other than last week, it has been a very fun season. When you assemble a team of talent, it can come together quickly.
But, when I watch the NFL, I like seeing, and you're right, as an Eagles fan, it has been fun. And we're going to talk about the Eagles. We'll bring in our buddy Dave Shiner here in a bit. But, listen, I like watching the 425 big game.
Yeah, me too.
I like watching
the Cowboys.
I like watching the Sunday night game. I like watching the Monday night game. And a lot of times this season, it's been, the LA teams that I don't care about, and both of them stink. It's been, this Sunday, Packers-Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there was some things on the line for the Packers, but it wasn't that great of a game.
Well, the Vikings laid an egg.
Does anybody want to watch the NFC South?
If you like Tom Brady, I guess.
Yeah.
There are those people out there. Let's face it. Sometimes the NFL is more about the individual.
Correct. So I just, to me, college is better. It's always going to be better. But the NFL will always remain more popular. That's just how it is. But I, for the life of me, I can't figure it out. It's just a lot of mediocre football teams.
Well, and as you said, when you're trying to pick against the spread, you're trying to figure out any trends.
Yeah,
there really hasn't been any trend here this year. Now, I remember in years past when the Patriots were dominant, even when the Chiefs were dominant, it just, I think what's hard is not that I'm comparing it to MLB and baseball, but again, when you have so many games.
Yes. Yes.
the games get watered down a little bit.
Correct.
Whereas in college, because of the format, and I don't like the format, every game is so crucial because you can't lose.
Every game feels like a big game, and that is, of course, going to change a little bit. Not as much as some people think, but it's going to change a little bit in 2 years.
Correct.
When we have the 12-team playoff. Okay, but anyway, back to the records here. I'm done picking over-unders. That was just a total disaster for me. I went 1-6. That was our Week 17 picks. We did not pick last week, as I mentioned. Dan, you only did one better. I mean, you had a chance to make up some ground. You didn't really take advantage of it because there wasn't a lot to get behind either. Now, the Cowboys and the Eagles game.
Eagles got close.
Well, it was 6 points. That's why neither one of we're being strict here. That's why neither one of us won that, because the Cowboys won by 6. And I actually did like your Lions pick. And they go and they lay an egg against the Panthers. And this is what I mean. Who wants to watch the Lions and the Panthers play?
And the Lions, speaking of trends, I thought at one point they're picking up speed. They're kind of gaining in the overall NFL rankings. And, man, I don't know if it's Dan Campbell or what it is, but there are certain games where they just don't show up.
No, they don't, and I mean it's but they're not the only ones, and that's
Correct.
my point. So where do we stand the overall record? We really, one of us needs to finish with a winning record, because otherwise it's not going to look good. I will tell
We'll
you
both
that.
be taking pie.
73-80 to 75-78. It's not great, but when you pick this many games against the spread, I'd like to see anybody do better. I'm sure there's some folks that definitely
Well,
could.
I'm sure there are too.
But-
There
but-
are definitely the people that
Yeah.
are putting money on this stuff week in and week out that I'm
Yes.
sure are winning. But I will say, I want to challenge those folks. What is the trick with the NFL? And it is so weird to me. Going back to that Dallas and Eagles game, they knew Jalen Hurts. Vegas knew Jalen Hurts wasn't going to play somehow, some way before anyone else did, because that line always favored Dallas.
It sure did. I just think it's also tough to, again, you beat that team when Dallas is good and the Eagles are good, to beat them 2 times in a season. I'm not counting playoffs. I'm
Sure.
just saying when you play your division rival twice in a season and you're both good, you're probably going to split. And I think Vegas knows that, and that's why, again, I picked the Cowboys. But I thought they would cover more. The Eagles did play well
They did,
overall,
with a backup.
unlike last week against the Saints, where they didn't play well. So it's been fascinating. So that's that. Quick talk. I don't want to dwell on this, but Monday Night Football, of course, just unlike anything we've seen in the recent past, where I left the room for 10 minutes to
Me too.
put the
I
kids
didn't know
to
what
bed,
happened.
and I came back in, and I see Booger McFarland in tears. And I'm thinking, what in the world happened? So then at the time they were showing the replay, and certainly Damar Hamlin, our thoughts and prayers are with him as he continues to fight. Some positive news, I think, that he is fighting and doing better, as better as you can be after a cardiac arrest event. I think it was a very freak thing that happened. And obviously, if you're on that field as a friend and a player and a teammate, the game had to have been postponed. I don't think anybody could have played after that. And I will say this, Dan, and then I'd like your thoughts on it. It was startling. And I really need to stay off of Twitter during these types of events, because
It got brutal.
this is where, in my opinion, of course, when something like this happens, even when it's a tragedy, it unfolded before all of our eyes. TV is the medium that means the most. And Twitter is, you are experiencing the game with everybody on Twitter, but there was a lot of criticism being leveled at some of the people on TV. You and I have to do this for a living in a different capacity. But when you're thrust into a situation, live TV, I commend Susie Kolber, Adam Schefter, Booger McFarland.
They're filling time.
They're filling time, and they're also watching something unfold just like us. They don't have any information. They're
That's
emotional.
the key
I
part.
commend Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. And all of them that had to fill that time not knowing. They were there to broadcast a football game.
Well,
And all of a sudden it became a news event. And it was scary.
kind of the veil behind the curtain here, so to speak. Oftentimes, we know as much as the audience knows.
Absolutely.
Which is not much. Or, we're scrolling through our phones.
Yep.
We're seeing the same things on Twitter and
Yep.
Facebook. And,
Yep.
in
And we're
real time,
waiting to hear from a producer, somebody that often is waiting for that information too.
Correct. And in real time, it's very hard to verify this information. I know there was a reporter in the tunnel from a local Fox affiliate in the area that was kind of getting an inside look, but then again, can you run with that kind of information? So to me, it's very difficult. It's
It
a
is.
very difficult situation. I do feel bad for the folks at ESPN because it was such a long period of time. And
Yes.
from a communication standpoint, you're likely not going to get much information on
Right.
the spot.
And that's just like, too, I think some folks, again, on Twitter, criticizing the NFL for not calling the game sooner. Listen, uh, there, there's a lot of moving parts here.
Right.
The NFL, some of those people, they're not at that particular game. They have to make the decision with the Players Association, the coaches. There's a lot of moving parts, and they did call the game. Everybody needed to relax, and the most important thing is Damar Hamlin's health, of course. And then the other players that saw this happen that were affected by it. But, I mean, this stuff just doesn't happen instantaneously.
No, and again, for those criticizing the people asking about what happens to the game or whatnot, it's just questions people are asking. It's nothing.
It's everything that we're sitting and asking everybody in our living rooms.
Right.
People are wondering about it. You can also be concerned, and everybody was most concerned about Damar's health, and we're still waiting for more updates there. But I thought the broadcasters did a phenomenal job as somebody in broadcasting expressing themselves, especially Booger, who, he was a player. Right. He knows what it's like.
Ryan Clark, too, came on
Ryan
later.
Clark with Scott Van Pelt did a great job.
Sharing his stories.
Yes.
I thought of Ryan Shazier. I thought of Adam Telefaro.
Yeah.
Back,
Yep.
I watched that live as a kid.
That was...
Now, they kept playing. That was the odd part. That was Penn State, Miami, and they kept playing.
They did. This one, though, was... I don't know. It's odd to say now, but you also knew, or at least I kind of felt when you watched it, we don't really know what caused it.
Right.
But this was different than a typical hit where somebody
Correct.
goes down. This was, I don't know, it really was scary. So I think just the way that it happened, it shook everybody up. So we're going to wait and see the NFL not saying anything yet about that game.
Well,
they could just give them a tie and move on and do that.
I'm not even sure. Do they just make
wipe
the
it.
results null and void? I mean,
They might. And again, well, one of the ways to do that is to just give them a 1 in the tie column. I don't know what's going to happen, but and again, neither does anybody right now.
And I guess my other question is, does the score at the time matter? All these things.
Right.
It's so hard to figure out. It's not, baseball can be called after 5 innings. I've never heard of a rule, and maybe there is a rule in the NFL. What makes a game official?
No, I don't know. I don't think they've had this issue. They've had this problem before. So these things are questions that will be answered down the road. Now, let's turn gears again. We wish the best and hope for the best for Damar Hamlin. And he's a great guy. Apparently, his toy drive raising millions of dollars
Over
from
$6 million as of this morning.
Just phenomenal. Reminder: we're taping this on Wednesday, so if you're listening Thursday or Friday, we may know more than what you're hearing us talk about right now. Let's shift back to football, though.
Yep, let's do it.
We talk about the NFL's final week of the season. So before we go anywhere else, Dan, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here.
Bring them on.
The Packers look like are they the scenario here? Are they in
right.
with a win?
Let me go to my little Bible here.
He's got his Bible, so we're gonna do this first, and then we're gonna get into the Eagles talk in just a bit.
Okay.
But I want to talk about the Packers first because this is a team that you've had a bugaboo about. Why?
Well, you just know that Aaron Rodgers is smarter than your average quarterback.
Sure, he is a very smart guy. He hosted Jeopardy.
Right. You know.
Can we just say that?
There's just enough talent surrounding him that they can find a way in. And I mentioned it earlier, it's the race to 8-8. So here we are. The Packers are indeed 8-8, and they have the easiest path of those in the bubble. All they have to do is win against the Lions.
And there's that Lions team again. Are they going to show up? And, what about the Lions?
So the Lions, they can clinch with a win at the Packers, and this is a big and. The Seahawks have to lose or tie versus the Rams. The Rams have nothing to play for.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Or they can tie with the Packers, which this is when it gets complicated. The Seahawks lose or tie versus the Packers, and Rams Seahawks tie, and Commanders win versus the Cowboys. So there's some complicated scenarios there.
I can't keep track
I don't
of that.
even know how they do it. Now, Seattle, on the other hand, they need to win. Packers need to lose or tie versus the Lions, or tie with the Rams, and Lions and Packers tie, and the Commanders lost tie versus the Cowboys. So
Okay. And by the way,
good luck with that.
does anybody? I mean, again,
We're getting a chuckle out of Mr.
games,
Shiner here.
Yeah, these games are going. Is there any game that doesn't matter?
Well, that's a good question.
That's because I mean, technically, there are games that don't matter to either team, but the results could matter to a bubble team. I don't know.
Well, the Giants can't do anything. The Giants. The
They're
Giants.
locked into
Yeah,
6
yeah,
right now.
but that game matters for the Eagles, so
Correct.
that matters.
Correct.
Now, here's a game. What about the Bucks Falcons? Does that matter?
Let me just double
I
check
don't think
here.
that game does not matter, does it? Because I mean, what are the Falcons aren't playing for anything, and the Bucks won the division.
Correct.
Yep. The Buccaneers
Yeah,
are
they're locked
Okay,
locked
so
in.
that's a game
So
that
they're
doesn't
the
matter.
3
So,
seed no
so
matter
is
what.
Atlanta
Correct.
is Atlanta favored in that game? I have to admit, now I didn't look that lineup because I don't care, but I'm just curious. Atlanta has to be favored in that game, right?
You know, in these scenarios, it's not mentioned at all. So
I
that
have
kind of
to-
tells you.
I think Atlanta's favored.
Let me double check.
But I am curious because they're home. The Buccaneers don't care. They might rest their
Atlanta
players.
is getting 4.5 right now.
Okay, see that's what I mean, and that's
mean-
hard to believe. But it's not hard to believe because I just said it. What are the
No, I'm
Buccaneers
sorry.
playing
Atlanta
for?
is negative 4.5.
No, I knew what
Yeah,
you meant.
okay,
They're,
yeah,
they're,
just wanted to make
they're-
sure, yeah.
They are the favorite at home going against a Buccaneers team that has no. I mean, just put in your B squad.
Who is the backup for Tom Brady? I don't even know.
I don't either.
He's played every game.
He's
played
played
every
every
snap,
game.
as far as I'm aware. So.
Yeah, and does anybody want to
Is
step
it,
up?
Is it his OC?
Who
This
do we
is a
have
name
here?
from the past. Blaine Gabbert,
Wow.
Blaine Gabbert.
QB2.
Yep, the
Yep.
old Jacksonville Jaguar. Must like the Florida weather.
there you
Okay,
go.
so there's a lot of scenarios out there, and again,
Let me quickly go through the AFC because this is even harder to figure out. So, the AFC, the number one seed, similar to the NFC, is still up for grabs. Unfortunately, because of this whole situation with the Bills and Bengals.
Yes.
So the
and
Chiefs.
this may, by the way, everybody stay tuned later this week. This may change when we have more information, but
Correct.
some of the things that you're going to say, of course, are no matter what going into Week 18, very important.
Yes. So the Chiefs can clinch the number one seed with a win plus a Bills loss or 2 Bills losses. Because again, the Bills could potentially have 2 losses on their record and a Bengals loss. So the Chiefs need some help.
Yeah, they do.
But first and foremost, they need to win.
They're in, but they like the Eagles. They haven't clinched that number
Right.
one seed yet.
You know, they
Right.
want the week off. They want the home field advantage. The Bills can clinch the number one seed with 2 wins. So that's a win at the Bengals, win versus the Patriots. But the Chiefs need to lose, and the Bengals also need to lose in Week 18. Okay. The Bengals can clinch with 2 wins and a Chiefs loss. So that's interesting. The AFC South title is still up for grabs. You think the NFC South is bad. The AFC South isn't much better. The Jaguars at 8-8 clinch with a win or
Right.
tie versus the Titans.
Yeah.
But the Titans can still clinch with a win.
win.
Nothing else needs to happen.
Yeah, so that game is very important. And by the way, that game is Saturday night here on ABC.
We'll talk about that one.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. And then the North is still open. So the Bengals can clinch with a win or tie versus the Bills or a win versus the Ravens. So a lot to figure out there yet.
And that's a good game. Can the Steelers make it in?
The Steelers can clinch with a win versus the Browns and a Dolphins loss and a Patriots loss.
All things that could happen.
So they need 2 teams to
and
lose.
That's all you need. And knowing the Steelers' luck, they will probably get in. We'll talk about
What do you
that.
think? Who do you think gets in out of that bunch? I mean, also the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Jags all need help.
You know, it's funny because we all know Tomlin hasn't had a losing season yet, and this would give him you can't have a losing or a tied season anymore.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah, true.
I kind of think somehow they're going to pull it
They find
out.
a way.
And this kind of reminds me of I think it was 2008 when the Eagles made it into the playoffs in the last game of the season, and there was a really bad Raiders team that had to beat a good team to get in. I
did
think
it.
that was the Darren McFadden years with
Yeah,
the
well,
Wildcat.
it's that
and all
equation.
these scenarios
Yeah.
had to happen, and it actually went through. And the Eagles made the NFC Championship game that
Yes, they
year.
did.
So hey, you get in.
It's a whole new
0-0.
season.
It's a whole
you know?
new season,
and
and
that's
but-
what's scary about the Eagles. I think this year.
Well, yeah, but let's talk about the Steelers. All I'm going to say is this: don't you think, to be fair to them, though, that they have played better down the stretch?
Oh yeah, I mean Pickett's obviously getting a little better. Obviously a game-winning drive the other
I think
day.
their defense has gotten better.
Yeah, I mean the defense has been pretty solid all year long. I
Yeah.
mean they've
Defense and
had the
ball
injury,
control.
bug a little bit with Watt, but
It's the
outside of
Steelers'
that,
way.
Hey,
So
I'm just saying, don't ever count them out because somehow
No.
they always get to 500. You
no,
know?
And
you
Do you really want to
absolutely
play them in the playoffs? If you're the
No.
Bengals, if you're even the Bills, I mean, a good defense, sure, they probably can't score with you, but, I mean, watch out.
I don't know if they're built to go all the way, but I wouldn't want to play them. I mean, I agree with you, especially if they look good here this last week. Okay, let's talk about the Eagles quickly. We have a lot of topics to cover and picks to get to. Can the Eagles make a run? And that seems like a dumb question, but
Long season. It's been a
long season. That team is built to make a run, in my opinion, and to go to the Super Bowl. We've seen it all year. But I was texting you, and we have a text thread, and I am for years and years and years. This guy over here, Tommaso, he's so negative with everything, and
the Eagle way, though.
I wanted to punch him in the face and shake him so many times and say, Dan, wake up. But this year the roles have kind of been reversed, and I'm kind of the I'll believe it when I see it. And I was texting these guys how disgusting it was to watch the Eagles just completely look like the Eagles of old against the Saints. I mean, it was a 6-9 team. The Eagles were at home, and they played horribly. I mean, it was pathetic. It was a pathetic performance.
I will disagree with you there.
When they could have easily just locked up the number 1 seed, and then this game against the Giants would have been meaningless anyway from both standpoints. But I was appalled at what I saw. So then the question now becomes, we'll start with you, Shiner. Can the Eagles make a run like we thought they could 5 weeks ago?
Well, this obviously comes down to one main thing, and it's the injuries right now. Mm-hmm. And I think most people are going to say, hey, if Jalen Hurts plays, we're all good. And I agree with that. However, I think the bigger name is Lane Johnson.
I totally agree with you.
If you've seen, I believe they are 9-22 when Lane Johnson does not play.
The man is a human wall.
So I think he's almost more important than anything else. Obviously, I mean, the defense, as much as they've been getting crap against the Saints, they held them to 13 points. There was a pick six in there, you know.
The defense was outside of the
first drive was horrible, but then, you know, they made their adjustments, and they've been doing that all year. I think they've given up the least amount of points in the second half of any team this year.
And that's fine. However,
you got to score points to win, though.
It was the Saints, and at some point, you're going to be in the playoffs against a team that's going to score on your defense. We know that, you know, and heck, it could even be the Packers. I'm just saying.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
At some point, I agree with you. The defense is fine, but at some point, they're going to get scored on. So injury. That's the point that you made.
Yeah.
But I will ask again, even if everybody comes back, is this team just building us up for a disappointment in February?
In Jalen, I trust. I mean, the man is on a mission. You could see his face on the sidelines. He wanted to be out there. Now, whether or not
this was disgusted.
Whether or not this was precautionary, and that's fine if it was, but you could tell the communication, the cadence wasn't there with Gardner Minshew. Some of the basics, and A.J. Brown was as mad as you could be at Gardner Minshew.
Very much so. And again, I like Minshew. I think he has what it takes to win these games. But with these injuries piling up and when he doesn't play well, it's going to cost you.
What did the Saints do? They pinched the pocket. They kept him in the pocket. He is not a pocket passer. He is a creator. He's an off-schedule kind of guy, you know, almost similar to Cam Rising. You know, I was watching Cam Rising. I'm like, am I watching Gardner Minshew? You know,
they shook him up, and I don't know. If
the big thing for the Eagles, and I'll just leave you with this.
Yes.
That read pass option, when it's not there, as it wasn't with Mr. Minshew, the running game changes, the passing game changes because the Eagles become more predictable. And that's where Jalen is the guy.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like to me it's all going to hinge on him. And by the way, so when are we getting those two back? Johnson, Hurts?
I believe Johnson was eligible last week.
Yep.
They did not activate
Correct.
him. Hurts, I mean, from all accounts, he's
fine,
playing.
right?
You know, so some people are even saying he could have played last week, but they're taking the precautionary.
So are they? You're saying they're both back against the Giants? We believe.
We don't know about CJ yet.
CJ
they haven't
Gardner
activated
Johnson,
him.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking Lane.
So Lane has a quote-unquote core injury that requires surgery, but he is delaying the surgery until after the playoffs because he wants to play.
Yeah. And I don't believe he is going to play until the playoffs, whether that is a wild card game or after the bye if they lock it up this week.
Correct.
Can we just go out and slap the Giants, please?
I hope so. I mean, the Giants have literally nothing to play for. Now, I understand Brian Daboll is a rough and tough kind of guy, wants to compete. But this would be pretty dumb if he sent out Saquon Barkley and something happens to him or Daniel Jones.
I mean, yeah. Look, they have a shot, too. You get in the playoffs, anything can happen. They have talented guys.
Right.
And I know, like you said, they're not a great team, but you don't need to be great in the play. I mean, you don't need to be great during the year. If Saquon puts together a great playoff run, you don't know what could happen. So you're probably right, and hopefully the Eagles can get it done. Okay, let's talk.
If not, we're in the playoffs. I mean, that's the thing.
No,
I mean, the worst comes to worst, the Eagles are in the playoffs.
Already in.
So it is what it is.
Okay, couple of quick hitters here, and then we have to get to the games. But we have to comment on Penn State's Rose Bowl, and what a finale to the season for those Nittany Lions. Just incredible because, the Rose Bowl was a bit of an afterthought this year, being played on January 2nd.
Yeah, not for me.
Penn State backing its way in, and Utah getting in there by beating USC. No, not for me. They're not for a lot of people, but I do think, again, just the setup this year was off, and again, it was raining there. Typical. Penn State took the weather from central Pennsylvania with them. But the reality of it is, I'm not sure many people before the season thought, after the last 2 years, that this team was capable of winning 11 games. So
I didn't.
I'm gonna throw out a couple of questions here. How important was it to get to the Rose Bowl, no matter how we got there, to have an 11-win season, and for Sean Clifford to go out in the way that he did by being the MVP of that game?
I'll start, and I will go back to it's midseason. They lose to Michigan, Penn State. Everyone is calling for Drew Aller. I still don't understand why. I mean, again, Sean Clifford is a proven commodity over an 18-year-old who obviously has talent. Sean Clifford earned his way to play the rest of the season, play in the Rose Bowl. And, yeah, against the big guys, Penn State didn't quite finish the job. But I don't know how much we can expect Penn State, even with a Drew Aller, to beat these teams moving forward. I really think people need to reset expectations a little bit.
Well, I always think that. And I think that, first of all, I only thought we had two bad games. The Michigan game and the Northwestern game. I thought we actually played well against Ohio State, but like you said, the talent levels are different. Now, having said that, who's in the national title game this year? Okay.
Yeah.
TCU.
It's TCU.
And TCU was an unranked team at the beginning of the year with a brand new coach. And all of a sudden, I think the talent composite has them at like 32. So we have more talent than they do.
Well,
but here's the deal: you have NIL, you have the transfer portal, and as much as those things are annoying in many ways, they perhaps are, and we are starting to see it balance things out a little bit.
It propelled TCU for sure, and I will say, you have that working for them. And Gary Patterson brought in a lot of that talent.
Yes,
it was a different voice that kind of pushed them ahead. Now, maybe that leads some credence to people that want Franklin out and want a new guy. But I feel like the TCUs of the world, this is the first time in the 9 seasons of the playoff format that a quote-unquote surprise team is there.
Yeah, correct.
So it's rare.
It's rare, but I think you're going to see it happen more now that the 12-team playoff is coming. We don't have time to get into that right now, but let's talk about James Franklin. Again, kind of the elephant in the room is always the guy nationally has a lot of knocks against him. I don't get that, and I certainly understand at times the frustration. But, I was listening to a podcast, I think it was The Audible, with Stuart Mandel and Bruce Feldman, I think. And they said that basically Penn State finished in the top 10, and they will this year, more times in the last 7 or 8 years than they did in the last 25 years.
Well, that's the perspective, right?
You have to look at this and say, we've become so focused on the playoff, and we want to win a national title. Everybody does, but the
only
reality,
one team does, though.
But only one team does. And
Yeah.
right now with the format, you've got your Georgias, your Alabamas, your Ohio States of the world. TCU cracked through this year. We'll see what they can do. But the point is, Franklin has had how many 10, 11 win seasons? Okay, he's won big bowl games. Now this is only the second Rose Bowl to do it. Okay, It was the Joe Paterno-led great team from 1994,
the Kajana Carter team,
and now Franklin's team that has a lot of momentum with it, saying goodbye to Sean Clifford. That's it in the history of Penn State. Joe Paterno, James Franklin have won Rose Bowls. Yeah. And I just think that, again, you can't build Rome in a day. And so no matter, even if you get another coach in there, there's going to have the same challenges that Franklin has tried to deal with. But I think this was a year to say, Penn State is here. We're continuing to try. We're not just folding up shop. And I think you've got to give Franklin his due here.
outside of the 2 games they lost. I mean, if you look at how they scored every single game, they pretty much dominated everybody outside of that first
Agreed.
game of the season with Purdue.
And
Now,
Purdue was pretty darn good.
and they were pretty good. Now, LSU showed them a little bit what for,
Right.
but I think at this point with opt-outs, you can't really take what happens in the bowl series. I mean, even Penn State's win, we knocked out their starting quarterback. That obviously led to us being able to rush them a little harder.
That's part of the game, though.
That's part of the game.
Yeah.
You still
I mean,
got to
how many
win.
times has our quarterback been knocked
right.
out?
I mean, look at
But-
Iowa last year.
I mean,
Yeah.
had Michigan and Ohio State ended up in the final, I mean,
Sure.
you have to say they're a top 10 team when you dominate all your other games. No one in the SEC is talking about, oh, well,
Right.
this game happened this way, so
You
whatever.
said the magic words right there, a top 10 team. And again, I think unless you're an alumni or alumnus, I should say, that has a ton of money and wants to donate to the program, I think a lot of people should be happy that Penn State has been consistently a top 10 team.
Yes, we haven't
in
had
the
to live
James
through
Franklin era.
We haven't had to live through the dark years, and even in the Paterno era, where the dark years came for a couple of years, he was able to recruit and get things back in '05, and we didn't have to suffer the decades-long disparity.
Mediocrity, right.
Nebraska or Tennessee, who is now finally coming back. What a win for them in bowl
But
season.
can they repeat it? I mean,
Yeah.
to the TCUs and the Tennessees of the world, now
Yeah.
is the challenge.
Right.
Can you repeat it?
So give me the 10 and 11 win seasons with the hope to break through, especially with this 12-team playoff. Gentlemen, we have to move on. We're going to talk about the national title coming up. That is one of our games to pick. And, of course, Jim Harbaugh flirting with the NFL. We don't need to say
As
anything
always.
more than that because I'm not so sure that's going to happen. But we'll get
I'll
into
tell
that
you one
another
thing,
time.
though, before
Yeah.
we leave that topic, if I get an offer from the NFL, I'll leave too.
Well, but I'll tell you what, you might be out in a year. And
That's fine.
I
I'll
think
take my check and
but-
walk.
But do you want to be the hero in Ann Arbor or the dog in Indianapolis or wherever you go?
I love the quote, though. It was Ian Rappaport that put out on Twitter that if he gets an offer, he will take it.
Yeah.
It was the big if he gets
Yeah,
an
well,
offer.
we'll see about that. There's a lot of games played this time of year. Okay, it is time, I believe, to talk some weather and some games, and of course, these are big matchups. So we start with the weather, and quite honestly, other than a few little waves, we don't see too many significant things. Now, Sunday, we're going to keep an eye on some
Yes.
games. There is a front moving through the Tennessee Valley, the Gulf Coast states, and the East Coast. So we're going to talk about that with these games. But let's cue it up, David. We have games of the week.
Games of the week.
We start Saturday night here on ABC. This is the game. It's winner
is
gets
big.
in, right? Pretty
Winner
much.
gets in.
Yeah. Titans and Jaguars. Who would have thought? The Jags fighting for a playoff spot. Dougie Peterson. I'm rooting for him.
I'm rooting for him, too, and they seem to be hitting their stride. They have a lot of talent in
Yep.
Jacksonville, so I give them the edge. I'm just going to say it right now. Tennessee has not impressed me.
Are the Jets done?
So the Jets, hold on one
Cue
moment.
up your algebra card.
Yes. I believe the Jets are totally done.
Okay, so the Dolphins should be able to win it, but this game is only a pick 'em because let's be honest, the Dolphins have not looked great down the stretch either.
No, and they need some help. So they need to win versus the Jets, and the Patriots need to lose for them to sniff the playoffs.
Yeah, again, totally possible they could get in.
Yep.
And they may be a dangerous team in the playoffs. And then you've got the Browns and the Steelers going at it at 1 o'clock. That's a good old-fashioned AFC North matchup.
And watch out for Mr. Deshaun Watson.
Yes, well,
Yeah, it's a big factor now these days.
it is, but again, he has to go to Pittsburgh.
Correct, and I think
So-
the Steelers are hungry. All right, let's go to page 2 here, so to speak.
Yeah,
we have the Giants and the Eagles, which is a game that means nothing for one team, means everything for the other.
You said it, and by the way, we're picking 6 games this week. Yeah, 6 games this week because there's no under the radar game at this point. No games under the radar.
They're all right
Everybody's
in front
watching.
of us.
Take us through the next 2.
Well, so the Eagles are favored big, which again, Vegas must know. Something we don't know. I would assume that is they're going to rest the starters on the Giants side of things. Lions and Packers. Oh my! Lions are not favored in this game because they have to go to Lambeau Field. Now, could you imagine if somehow on this magical run Aaron Rodgers has been putting together, if it's the Lions that take them out at home?
It would be. It's an interesting game. I mean, I will say that. But they're going to have to play in those elements, and we don't expect that bad of weather. But it's still Lambeau in January. I'm not sure I'd want to go.
Exactly. So good luck to the Lions.
Yep.
I think the Packers get that one too. And then we settle with next week. So this is beyond the weekend.
Yeah, Monday.
Monday. We're looking at Georgia, the Bulldogs, Stetson Bennett. Remember, he was a walk-on quarterback for Mr. Kirby Smart against TCU. And a guy who didn't start a quarterback to begin the year, Max Duggan.
Yep, but ended up going to New York for the Heisman, and Sonny Dykes in his first year. I love him, and this line has come down. It started at 14. It's now down to 12.5.
Well, and I'm more curious about the over-under. Now, again, Georgia kept up scoring-wise. Can they do it again? Because they sometimes do not impress you on offense.
And doesn't this feel like, both playoff games were high scoring? Doesn't this feel like it's going to be a defensive game?
It certainly could be, my friend.
So I'm tempted to lean the under there. But again, I'm not going there because of my record last week. So let's take you through some of the games on Saturday.
This is pretty easy. We have the first game in Jacksonville. Weather should not be a factor. It should be nice.
Nice night for football.
Florida had a cold spell over the last 2 weeks, and now they're recovering. And we look at sunny Miami, 79 degrees moving into Sunday's forecast. Again, not a whole lot going on this weekend in Florida. We keep the rain away. It's more to the north. Really not seeing a whole lot going on. In fact, the daily shower and thunderstorm chances don't even seem to be around. So
that's
pretty
great.
Smooth sailing. A little bit of an easterly flow Saturday night. That does weaken a little bit moving into Sunday, but not much. So there is a little bit of wind if there is a kicking game scenario.
Yeah,
in these
that Miami game's a
important
pick 'em.
games.
So keep that in mind, too. We go from Green Bay to Pittsburgh to Philly. And this is where the weather gets interesting. Just some clouds in Green Bay. Cold, 34, but not Arctic. And then Pittsburgh could see a few showers for that game on Sunday.
Some snowflakes, too, possible. I mean, this could be a mixed type of event.
Absolutely. I think by the time the game kicks off, remember, that's the big 425 game
correct.
on Sunday. The Phillies and the Eagles and the Giants look dry.
Yeah, well, and again, it's all about the speed of this system.
Yeah.
It looks like the bulk of it's during the morning into the early afternoon.
Ooh, look at that, though. Maybe not so dry in Philly.
It's hard to know how fast this is going to move through.
Maybe
This
some
is still-
snow.
Right, and that's what I mean. There could be some snow mixing in. Does the field get wet? Do you take Jalen Hurts out with a lead? A lot of these things are going to be a factor. I mean, that's a pretty healthy line.
Yeah, Green Bay on the outside looking in, but Pittsburgh and Philly could see some wet and maybe some white weather over the weekend. I would expect the winds to kick around with this front coming through.
Bit. I don't think very much so. This is not a very strong system. So, again, being as early as we are out moving into Sunday, this really could be a non-event in the end.
Well, yeah, because honestly, it doesn't look like the system does not impress us in the model world. And quite frankly, you talk about the Eagles and the Giants game. Is weather going to be much of a factor if the Giants don't care anyway?
Right.
This is
it's
where
hard to
it
know.
may not matter, and it is hard to know. But let's talk about our picks here. We are different. We're not different on many this week, but I am going to say
Wow.
I kind of agree with you about the Titans, but I will tell you, Dan, that I still it's hard to trust either team.
Right. It's the weirdness of the NFL.
Yeah, but I like as much as I like Doug Peterson. I like Vrabel.
And you like Derrick Henry.
And I like Derrick Henry, and I think that they can get it done on Saturday night.
Yeah. I feel like there's more talent for Jacksonville. I feel like Trevor Lawrence is finally getting some of that pedigree everybody's been talking about build up. And the defense for the Jags isn't bad either.
What an indictment that would be if the Jags went on Urban Meyer.
Hey.
I mean, we knew it, but, I'm just saying this would be total proof that
that it didn't work.
he was a fraud.
Yep, total fraud.
Okay, Jets-Dolphins are a pick 'em. Both like the Dolphins here, especially if the Jets are done.
Well, and the Dolphins, this is a must-win.
It's a must-win. They haven't been great down the stretch, but again, Tua, good quarterback. They could be dangerous in the playoffs. And, of course, no surprises here based on our earlier conversation with Mr. Shiner, too. We like the Steelers, and we do like them to cover. So I think that they can do that. And we both like the Eagles to cover, right?
We both like the Eagles to cover. Again,
14's a big number, though.
Given the circumstances, I think the Eagles are going to be mad.
Yeah.
I just have that feeling that they're going to come out.
This is going to be their stamp on the season, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't mind if Jalen is perfectly healthy, get some reps. I know that everyone says it doesn't matter. I want to see it. The team needs to be in sync. I like that.
Yeah, correct. Both on the Packers at home.
Both on the Packers at home. Again, it's Aaron Rodgers. The man is a Hall of Fame quarterback. If he's not the best quarterback in the league, he's one of the best. And then it goes to this big line.
This is
TCU
where,
and Georgia.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of picking the same thing here,
yes.
right? You're picking Georgia to win, and I'm going to pick TCU to cover the 12 and a half. So, I mean, ultimately, Georgia can win by a lot or a little, and you're going to win that. I am going to pick TCU to stay within the number, though, because I realize I think to a lot of outsiders this game could get out of control.
Yep.
But A lot of people thought that about the Michigan game.
I was going to say, now maybe that had something to do with the layoff. It's hard to know, but I mean, J.J. McCarthy is not nearly the talent of Stetson Bennett. I'll just put that out there.
He's not, but also, again, everybody, all year, everybody's counted TCU out.
I think they keep it close.
I don't
think
think
they
that
keep
you
it
can.
close.
So I think that's going to be a fun matchup, and it's going to be a time to say, okay, Georgia, you're the blue blood. TCU,
Let's see it.
You're the new kid on the block. You've got talent too, though. How can this game be good, and is this a preview of the 12-team playoff?
I honestly think, too, the Georgia close game this past week could help them.
It could.
Because I think it may have reinvigorated the cause a little bit, so to speak.
Yeah, if they're the new Alabama, then they come out being angry.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to take on my. Oh, we have a cue for Brett's best.
Time now for Brett's Best.
Yeah, and this is a game I could care less about, but couldn't care less about.
Well, who ruined the Commanders' season? Did you see who played last weekend for the Commanders?
I believe it was
Carson.
Yep,
Mr.
that-
Who
Carson.
just got benched again.
Yeah, it's just
Well.
people keep giving them chances. I mean,
Yeah.
Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron, sunk the boat.
Yeah, the boat is sunk, and that's what you get when you take a hit on when 19 is showing, and sorry, Ron.
Nope.
Cowboys -5.5 against the Commanders, a game that I think will mean more to the Cowboys. Are the Commanders done?
Commanders are done.
Okay, well then
they
I
were
think,
eliminated.
I think the Cowboys will be mad. They're good. They want to get in, but they do have to go to FedEx Field. What a dump.
Well, and weather could be a factor.
Could be a factor. They're going to be wet there, but I think the Cowboys will get it done here.
I think so too. I mean, again, they're playing for the number 1 seed. They don't want to help out the Eagles by losing.
Can we ask our guy over there? It's 41. Are we taking the under there?
Hey, George.
Taking the under on the 41? Take him to win.
Ooh,
Okay.
take him to win. He's
41's
confident.
low, though. 41's low, and they just got to get by. I am going to take him to win, though. We'll get into that. Your Doppler Dandy.
It's Doppler Dandies.
I feel like we got to put a feeler out to Pete Carroll and get him on the show because he's been kind of our NFL mascot here as of late.
Well, they did a piece on him last week on ESPN Sunday NFL Countdown, and a super fan that lives in Germany of the Seahawks came over to training camp, and he got a piece of Pete Carroll's chewed gum. And he has it encased in glass.
Is this Hey Arnold? Where you have the gum tribute?
Well, but Pete's always chewing.
Yeah.
And he's a bubble yum guy, and they did a whole thing on Pete Carroll's gum. So is the gum going to take him to the playoffs?
Well, if it's anything of a consolation prize to him, they could back in this weekend.
Yeah. Again, they're playing a Rams team that has
Stunk.
Yeah, they're uninspired.
Stunk.
Sean McVay would have been better taking that job next to Al Michaels.
You better believe it. I mean, could he be in some trouble if they do this again next year? Because
Well-
guess what? There's not a lot of talent on that team right now.
No, there's not. And again, what a waste of SoFi Stadium. Now, the national championship game is going to be there Monday night.
Yes.
So that'll
And
be
is
fun.
the Super Bowl there too?
It was there last year.
Oh, it was there last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Seahawks 6.5. So let's get to the final picks. We got to cue it.
Final picks.
Always a fun part of the show. We don't differ on much. You're going with your boy Doug Peterson.
I'm going with Dougie. As much as I like what Nick Sirianni has done, I will never forgive Jeffrey Lurie for kind of using Doug as a scapegoat for some of their issues.
Yeah, I miss
I
him.
wish he was still in Philly.
Yep, he's a Philly guy, no doubt. But Dolphins, Steelers, Eagles, we all like them. Packers too. That game scares me a little bit. I will be honest.
I agree. It does. But again, it just seems like it's teed up for the Aaron Rodgers show, the Tom Brady show.
Yeah, here we go again.
Ratings will be up. NFL will be happy.
Yeah. Then we do differ on the national championship games
Yes.
slightly. Georgia, all you need to do is have them win. I do like TCU to at least keep it within the 12.5, but it wouldn't surprise me. I don't have the guts to take the money line, nor would I bet the money line, but I would bet them to keep it close.
I know a few Georgia fans, and I want to sincerely ask them, did you think you could win back-to-back national championships with a walk-on quarterback when you had the likes of Jake Fromm and Justin Fields in your quarterback room, and it's Stenson Bennett with the chance to build a
fourth.
dynasty?
The fourth. It really is a great story. And then I'm going to take the Cowboys at 5.5. I like them.
Okay, and I will take the Seahawks. Pete Carroll. Now, the Seahawks, let me go back here to my little sheet. The Seahawks have the toughest road, so that's when I said they would back in.
Yeah.
They have to win against the Rams, which we're picking, and the Packers need to lose or tie versus the Lions. Or they could tie with the Rams and the Lions and Packers tie. So this is difficult.
But basically, let's
need to
boil
win.
this down. They need to win, but if the Packers win, they're out.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun that we have both games listed here. It's going to be a fun Sunday.
It is.
And then, unfortunately, for Monday, some coaches are not going to have jobs anymore.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's going to be Black Monday as we move into the national championship game, and we will talk more about that, of course, next week as we keep an eye on things, and that will line up directly with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, whatever that situation is.
yes.
He was meeting apparently with people with the Carolina Panthers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Broncos too, and
yeah, so
maybe the Colts. He was a Colt for a while.
the Colts. And then the other name to keep an eye on, I mentioned this, I believe, in one of our podcasts, is this the year Ryan Day makes the jump? If the Colts call, and let's say he sours on the Ohio State fan base, I mean, it's getting a little stressful there in Columbus.
Well,
4
I mean,
straight playoff appearances, all losses.
Is there a reason to like the Ohio State fan base? I mean, they chased Kirk Herbstreit out of town. They really are an insufferable bunch.
Well, but let's face it, Penn State. Let's talk to the fans here for a little bit. Do you want to become that? Do you want to become the insufferable fan base that expects a national championship every year?
No, and I think luckily it's just a small subset of folks that
Sure.
Don't have it. All right, put that up full screen because we want to hear from you. Weatherwagers@gmail.com. Again, we're looking for side wagers. Don't have one this week. A lot of our picks are the same.
Correct.
But we will be making some, I'm sure, throughout the playoffs. And you can find us wherever you get your social media channels. Meteorologist Brett Thackera, Brett Thack, ABC27 on Twitter and Instagram. And you can be found where?
Oh, you can find me, Doppler Dan, on Twitter and Instagram, Meteorologist Dan Tommaso on Facebook. We will be tweeting, talking, posting about all these games.
We love it. We'll probably do a preview of the pod here tomorrow, too, online, so you want to stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening, Mr. Shiner. Thank you, and go Birds.
Go Birds.
We appreciate that. Dano, take us out.
Have a great week, everybody. Let's get into the playoffs in a smooth way. Beat the Giants.